From deep within M&N Central, it's Two on the Aisle with me, Charles Gross, and Leslie Hoban Blake. Tonight, reviews of The Shark is Broken, Here Lies Love, A Will to Live, and Rock and Roll Man. Ladies and gentlemen, it is time for Two on the Aisle. And how are you tonight, Leslie?
Well, I am just I'm over the moon. I'm just very energized. You know, I've been so flawed, and I'm feeling good. And how are you feeling, Charlie?
I am very good. Eager to get into the swing of things, because we've seen some very interesting shows. Jaws. What can you say about Jaws? I mean, this is such, it's a phenomenon. First, there was the book, Peter Benchley, a huge bestseller. Then the movie, which probably better than the book, and it not only put Steven Spielberg on the map. This was the hit that really launched his career, but it created the blockbuster, the summer blockbuster, which we have had ever since. And of course, there were the sequels, which I've never bothered to see. And then the backstory, well, what was happening? Because Spielberg decided to shoot this on location.
In Long Beach, yeah.
And they had a huge mechanical shark named Bruce. Who constantly broke down, which ultimately Spielberg turned to his advantage. Because since he couldn't use the shark, he couldn't use the shark. And as Alfred Hitchcock would tell you, the fear of the unknown is actually scarier
right, absolutely,
than seeing it. So this is the story of, well, what were the principal actors of this film? That's Roy Scheider and Richard Dreyfuss and Robert Shaw, played, by the way, by his son, Ian, who was also...
Dead ringer for his father, dead ringer.
Absolutely, who was the co-author of...
a very good script.
This play, we'll get into that.
I like
co-author with Joseph Nixon.
Right.
And we see them, they sit around, and I don't know these actors, I've never met them, but their portrayals here very much reflect their characters in the movie. There is Robert Shaw, the veteran writer, actor, the hard drinker, in fact, at one point, I think the Dreyfuss character says, well, we don't know where you end and Quint begins. And there's Richard Dreyfuss, the arrogant, self-centered, but...
neurotic as hell.
Neurotic, yes. Panic, insecure.
Right.
And then you've got Roy, who played Chief Brody in the movie, kind of the calm, intellectual, relatively low-key.
With a terrific body who loved to go out and sit in the sun.
Yes.
He loved getting tan.
Yes,
And he would
put it on display. My problem with this play is that they're basically sitting around bored. And that's kind of boring.
But it's sitting around backstage, so it's backstage boring, which is, there are several, Noel Coward wrote a play about backstage boring, Tonight at 8:30, where, you know, you sit in the room and people have arguments, and then they go out and they have to play lovers and whatnot. Here, you got the juice of the men, what they had to put aside to do the roles that they did, and I just thought it was just like backstage chat. I had a ball. Any kind of little small thing that they dropped that I didn't know before, I now have this little tidbit in my head. I'll never get rid of it.
See, I wanted more. I wanted to know, well, what are they doing? How are they fixing the shark? How is Spielberg going to salvage this? His first big project, and he does not appear. We hear his voice off stage, but that's it. And I felt this was just too focused on these individuals, and I didn't find them interesting enough to carry the evening.
First of all, inside our playbills was this little insert. And the insert is a 3-paragraph, quite short story by Ian Shaw, who looked like Opie when he was a little boy, sitting with his father, and he looks exactly like his father now, as you'll see in the photos. And he tells the story of how he came to write the play, and what it's done for him. And he loved his father very much, and he knew all along his father was a drunk. I mean, these were not things...
He was inspired when he found his father's alcoholic log.
Well, drinking
log. Robert Shaw died when his son was a boy 8.
Oh, there.
So this,
Yeah.
and you know what? Maybe someday there'll be a play about the writing of this play. And it might be a little more interesting than what we're seeing here.
Oh,
I have to say, I love the performances. You know, Alex Brightman as Richard Dreyfuss. Maybe this will be the role that finally gets him his
Gets
Tony.
him his Tony. 2 nominations and no
Right.
Tony. Yes.
Colin Donnell is Roy Scheider.
Lovely job.
Interesting story about Roy. You know, he went on to play essentially Bob Fosse in all that jazz. A very different role than Chief Brody. But they were debating, thinking, the guy's never sung and danced before. Then someone said, he never killed a shark before either. And that worked out pretty well.
You know, it's called acting.
Yes.
So, I enjoyed it enormously, and I found it very clever. And no coward will put 3 people in a room and have something go on.
Yes.
And the talking was.
This is not No Coward.
But it wasn't meant to be. It's meant to be 3 guys, and none of them is the same. They're totally different. They're from different places.
They are totally different. They are well-drawn characters, put in a very.
And if it weren't for this movie, they would never be in the same room, probably.
Probably not. But that tends to happen with a lot of lot of performers.
Sure.
So my conclusion is, if you're interested in Jaws, read the book, see the movie again. The shark is broken. I kind of think it's Jaws jumping the shark. If the 2 sequels to the original movie didn't bring it there already.
Listen,
I will give this 3 out of 5 playbills.
Go see Alex Brightman play Richard Dreyfuss, if for no other reason, and see Ian Shaw play his dad, if for no other reason, and go see Colin Donnell take his shirt off, which is kind of fun too. And I would give it 4.75. I really had a good time.
Okay. Moving on, we are going to talk about a musical, which is the story of a woman in a foreign country who grows up in poverty. She's very beautiful. She marries a politician, and he becomes the president, dictator of the country, and she becomes his first lady. No, not that one.
Nope, not that one. She never does this. She does everything else but this. That's the problem.
And you will never hear the audience going, Imelda, Imelda.
Well, it's called Here Lies Love.
Which I believe was on her tombstone.
Is that what?
I think that's.
She doesn't have a tombstone. She's still alive.
Oh, well, maybe that's what she wants to put on her tombstone.
She's about 94, but she's still alive. They're calling it an immersive experience because in addition to 2 stages on either end of an empty theater, they have platforms on boxes, all rectangular, that can be moved into any configuration they want. They can be walkways, they can be runways, they can be this, that, and the other. You get to change the scene very easily. And the people, they have stagehands on the stage area with little lights like guys bringing planes in, and they you move with them. If they move the set to go this way, then you follow their light and you go around. I mean, now we didn't do that. You've done that, Charlie, but I didn't do it.
They had a production of this at the Public Theater off Broadway. I think it was about 10 years or so, give or take. And I did have that experience, and I enjoyed doing it. It was, it's fascinating to try something a little different, to experience different types of theater. This time, I thought I was going to be standing. Turns out I was in the first row of the mezzanine.
So was I.
Which I am convinced is the best place to be.
That was good.
There were times when performers from the show were standing closer to me than I am sitting next to you now. I mean, it was the closest I've ever been to a performer on stage, and it was a fascinating experience. A little unnerving, a little confusing, because the way they've got the sound set up, they're singing, this person is singing right in front of me, and I can't hear it coming from the performer.
Well, it might not go up, it goes out.
Yeah, but
they sing out and you're sitting up there.
Because when I'm watching them on stage, it certainly sounds like it's coming from...
They're singing out to you.
Right.
And now he's singing out to them and you're up there. I don't know if that's the reason.
I don't know. At one point I was thinking, wait, are they lip syncing?
No, I don't think so.
I don't think so either. Because there were times when I could hear the voices, but... There were other times I was thinking, why am I not hearing this more clearly?
There's quite a bit of talent in the show, and certainly we could hear all of those voices. And there are 5 veteran actors. The big thing about this that they made a fuss about is that it's all Filipino actors. The director is Alex Timbers, who was involved with Hamilton, and The play is written by David Byrne and Fatboy Slim, neither two middle-aged to elderly white guys. Fatboy Slim is even British. Ariel Jacobs, who's playing Imelda, we saw originally in Aladdin. Jose Llana, who plays Marcos, was the last time I remember seeing him was as a young man. He played one of the sailors in On the Town. Conrad Ricamora we saw in Soft Power. Unfortunately, he was out the night that I saw the show, but Roy Flores did a wonderful job. I didn't know that it wasn't one of the stars.
And who is he playing?
He plays Ninoy Aquino, who is the antagonist of Marcos. And then, of course, Lea Salonga, whom we all know from Miss Saigon and many other shows in the meantime.
And interesting, there is a helicopter in this show, but it doesn't make an appearance on stage. Unfortunately, she had left the cast by the time I saw it.
I don't know, it was a couple of days.
And I think it's important to understand this is, as you said, an immersive experience. I do not find the Imelda and the Ferdinand characters very strongly drawn. I did find their opposition, the senator, strongly. Here you have a character with a story, with an arc, someone we can sympathize with. You know, it's not about him, but this was the only time where I thought we had some real character development.
Right.
The Marcoses, they come to power, they do really horrible things, and they do more horrible things.
Right.
And then that's basically it. No real development. And you can't be sympathetic for them.
No.
At all, and they're drawn very thinly. But here you have a man desperate to save his country.
Yes.
He is jailed. He is exiled. He returns to the country knowing that there's a good chance he will be shot. And indeed, they play an actual recording of a phone conversation. He says, I'm very likely will be shot when I get off the plane. And he comes back anyway, and indeed...
he's shot getting off the plane. I know. It's a true horror story.
Yes.
And Aquino actually had problems when he actually took over. I mean, there was a cadre that really wasn't happy with him. I don't know enough about the politics there, really. But Lea Salonga played his mother, and she had a wonderful song. I mean, it was a song about her son and how much she loved him and how much she loved the country.
And that's a character, again, making a small part of the show, but again, a much stronger than the two principal characters.
Well, when you have nothing but evil, I mean, it was interesting to watch her grow evil, because she wasn't evil all the way along. And you got the feeling that there was a minuscule period of time when she felt a member of the poverty-stricken people. But I think she had enough of that and wanted what was on the other side, and didn't really care how she got it.
She embraced a life of extravagance.
Oh boy, did she!
You know, she was a regular at Studio 54. In fact, it would have been something had they staged this at Studio 54, which of course is now a theater. So you don't have characters. You have a fairly familiar story. We have literally seen this story before.
Well, the spine of the story is, you know, poor girl becomes rich girl becomes, you know,
and unfortunately, this story kind of replays itself, you know, with dictators doing really bad things at the expense of their people, and the good ones getting killed.
The music is interesting because it does have some reference to the original place of origin.
The Philippines.
The Philippines, I know, but I mean, it has some Filipino musical overtones. It has some Filipino musical overtones. Thank you. It's not a complete sentence, but for David Byrne and Fatboy Slim, it's a total change from anything that either of them has done. Fatboy Slim is a rock and roll hip hop kind of person, and David Byrne did his own show. And we know David Byrne has, with the Talking Heads, did kind of weird stuff. This stays within the parameters of a Broadway musical, kind of.
Absolutely.
You know, and it has a cast of 4, 8, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 22. Should have counted that before. 22.
That's a nice cast.
All Filipino actors, and all of the replacements will be Filipino actors. And before anybody says anything about Ariel Jacobs, which there are always, you know, those people in the background, the little trolls, she has Filipino heritage. It's in her grandparents. So, you know, so much for that. But
so
anyway,
it's an experience. I thought I liked the score. I think I couldn't hear a lot of the lyrics.
I had no trouble with the lyrics. I heard them.
You know, maybe
I was sitting right center, though. Were you at the end?
Yeah.
That's why, because everything flows to the center, and
Right.
I would.
You know,
don't sit at the end if you go.
Yeah.
Go sit in the
I
center.
wasn't quite at the end, but
Yeah.
I wasn't quite at the center either. If you go, my recommendation is take the first seat in the mezzanine, first row in the mezzanine, if you can get
Well,
it.
that's where I was sitting, and I agree it was a good spot. I didn't
And
want to try to stand for the time.
What it lacks in story and character development, it does kind of make up with the immersion. It's an interesting, and it's a different experience.
Well, and of course, while this is going on, if they're talking about something, we see highlights. We see
Yes.
the actual Marcos doing something.
Sure.
We see the New York Times headlines. We should have said that. I mean, that's really all
Well,
around.
I think we just did.
Oh, okay.
But yes, it is multimedia. It is multimedia.
What would you give it?
I would say 3.5.
Wow. So you don't think people should go see it? That's not much of a recommendation.
It's well, out of 5. It's not so bad.
Do you think? Well, my thing is, I think people should go to see it just for the experience, even if they're not into Philippine politics, etc.
Yeah.
I think the experience was fun.
Well, again, it's the experience more than the story and the show
Not
itself.
sure whether people want to pay the Broadway price for it, but you know,
That's another
That's
story.
another story. That's always a person's private prerogative. But I would give it a 4.
Okay.
And I wish I had seen Conrad Ricamora.
I wish I had seen Lea Salonga.
There you go. Okay.
Moving on. Going to go to the, I think it's called the Chain Theater?
Chain Theater.
The Inch Theater, where I saw we both saw a fascinating show called A Will to Live. This is by Helena Reinrach, not someone you would have heard of. It was adapted by Rick Hamilton. Directed by Rick Hamilton, adapted by Kirk, I hope I get this right, Guskowski.
Guskowski, yeah. He was there. I met him.
It is a one-woman show, Marcia King as this young woman who, during the Holocaust, was a prisoner at 3 different concentration camps. And this is the story of her experience there, how she survived, and in fact is still alive today. I think she's 99 years old. At the end of the play, there are video interviews of her, so we know what happened to her after. She ultimately came to America. She married, raised a daughter who I think unfortunately died of breast cancer at 40, but apparently she has grandchildren who are still there for her. So, and it is a fascinating story. We see what her life was like prior to the Nazis, and then we see her life in the concentration camps, how she avoided the concentration camps, the very foolish mistake she made that caused her to be captured, and how she survived by her wits, by luck,
and by her strength, her physical strength.
Yeah.
I mean, she doesn't know why that happened, but what the tasks that the women were given were truly horrible. But the first task they gave them was to find out who could last, because they needed strong people there. They got rid of the weak ones as quickly as they could. So they put the women out in a quarry to pick up heavy rocks. I mean, like bent. You know, they picked up rocks, but in this case it was for real. And they picked up rocks and they moved them so they could build. I think they were building kilns, but I'm not sure. It doesn't really matter what they were building. And she survived that. Her hands got broken and crappy looking, but you know, and it's great.
And ultimately, because of fortunate circumstances and her skills, she did office work, and then she was doing work in the sewing section.
She was a seamstress. She became a seamstress.
Right. Of it, or she did more management work, so that was good until the opposition, until the Russians and the British were coming, and they destroyed the camp. The Nazis wanted to cover up any evidence of this. And she was moved first to Auschwitz, then to Bergen-Belsen. When she was found by, I forget who liberated the camp, she weighed about 60 pounds, and they thought she was dead. Ultimately, she recovered at a Swedish hospital.
The play begins in the Swedish hospital, and we see it as a memoir.
As a memoir. It is a fascinating, gripping evening. It's like 2.5 hours long, a one-woman show, and pulled off so amazingly. I have seldom seen something this powerful, this potent, and again, in a one-person show. You normally go to a theater like this, you see something like this, it's either very heavy-handed, or it lacks the drama. Here, this had everything.
Masha King should be, I mean, the script is one part, but Masha King should be commended for understanding that it can't be heavy to
Right.
begin, because then, the two parts of the play are so separated by the intermission. And the part that's really intriguing is that you have projections. So the hospital is projected. If she talks about something else,
Right.
it's projected. On the stage itself is a bed and a chair and a table. That's all the scenery that's on the table. Everything else is, and it's perfect that way.
Absolutely.
And my only comment is 2.5 hours is too much. First of all, it becomes relentless, and I know that isn't how they mean it, and I'm sure that, but Helena Weinrauch herself is involved in it, so she must have wanted most of what's in it to be in it. I would go to the first act and I would cut a lot of it. That's her happy childhood, and then the change that came over, and the fact that her family was gone in an instant.
Right. I think it was important to show the kind of life she had.
I'm not saying it wasn't, but I said they could have shown less.
There was nothing I would have cut out. I enjoyed it. I never thought it dragged. I never thought it was too long.
By the second act, when she started to talk about the horrors of what she really went through. I mean, I've always thought about things. When I was a little kid, I would say, how did they go to the bathroom? You know, when I knew that they were packed into trains, but how did they go to the bathroom? Well, she tells us. And it's what, if I had been older, I would have imagined, you know, and then I tried to put that out of my mind, and I didn't pay attention anymore.
You know, you would like to put something out of this mind, but we can't.
No.
Because otherwise it will happen again.
She has been speaking nonstop since she's come to America. She goes to classrooms. She does television appearances. She's been on nighttime shows. And she says the story has to be told. 99, you know.
And it will continue to be told thanks to this amazing production, which I will give 5 out of 5 playbills to.
5 out of 5 for me too.
A very, very strong recommendation that you go and you see this play.
Definitely 5 out of 5 for me too. And yes, I agree. I really do agree.
Okay.
So,
well, on our previous shows, we've had Charlie's Corner. Now we're going to have Leslie's Loft. This
unless
is a
you
show
can come
that,
up with a better name, send us a better name.
yeah, if you haven't got a name for Leslie's Loft,
otherwise we're gonna stay up in the loft.
this is a show that I wanted to see. Unfortunately, it's closed.
It's
so
suddenly closed.
Leslie's going to give us a quick.
Yeah, I had a friend in it, but but he's gone. Okay, this is called Rock and Roll Man, and it says rock and the little ampersand, Rock and Roll Man, and it's about Alan Freed, who actually was the man who invented the term rock and roll. He did it one day when he was talking on the radio. He was a radio DJ for years, and he finally got to New York, and he was actually on WINS, and he was on other stations that I remember, and but I don't remember hearing him. And he would talk to the kids about the new music, and he would say, "We're rocking and we're rolling." And finally, he said, "So come and listen to the rock and roll." And there were two things that got him. One was an actual crime, and one was not a crime, but a perceived. It was a.
The crime was payola.
Yeah, well, the crime was payola, but the other thing is that black and white kids danced together to the music that he was playing. And this was just parents couldn't take that. A lot of parents could not take that. I think the fact that he was on the East Coast made it a little bit easier.
I would think so. I would think in New York that would not have been as much of a...
But it was going on around the country, and so there were people running to their senators and saying,
right,
we got to get rid of this.
But certainly they couldn't get rid of rock and roll across the land.
No, but what they did do is they got the ear of Herbert Hoover, who found out about the payola scheme and used the payola scheme because he was no more happy about black and white kids dancing together than the parents were. And so we have Konstantin Maroulis, whom some of you may remember from the one of those singing shows. I don't know if it was America's Got Talent or the other one, but anyway, he won and he went. He was a standby on Broadway in Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. He played that all over the country. And then we have Joe Pantalino. You never see him anymore. He was in Sopranos. And he sings, and he's lovely. And
who does he play?
He plays two characters. He plays a guy who owns a bar that Alan Freed goes to, and then he plays a guy named Morris Levy. This is a real person. And my friend Bob Airy, who plays J. Edgar Hoover, which is horrible to do. He's got a three-piece suit, and it's so warm under the lights. I don't know how he manages, and he runs back and forth. And then you have wonderful performers who play people like Little Richard and Laverne.
And this is a musical.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't say it was a musical, did I? No, it's
think
about
so.
rock and roll, and it's filled with rock and roll.
And there's some original tunes, but mostly classic rock tunes.
They should have stuck to the rock tunes. I mean, the original tunes sort of come and go, as always happens when you have one of these shows where you have the original song. It's like Huey Lewis in Back to the Future, man. That's all you walk out whistling. But some of the performers that are played are Little Richard, Laverne Baker, Frankie Lyman, and there's a Buddy Holly, Pat Boone, because what happens is, of course, with Little Richard, and we're going to show you a little footage on that. Little Richard songs were played on the black stations, and Pat Boone's versions came on the white stations, and they were #1 in the whatever those shows were.
Yeah, I could not imagine Pat Boone singing Tutti Frutti,
Well,
but
here
apparently you
Here
learn
you go.
something new every day. Your conclusion?
Oh, I wish it had stayed running. I thought it was really well done. I didn't realize I was coming to see it at the very end of its run.
How many playbills?
It was lively. I would give it 4.5 for sure.
And obviously you would recommend it.
Oh yeah, it's off Broadway. It's not that expensive, and it was a lot of fun.
Well,
very well done.
And who knows? This shows often have a life after their Broadway and off-Broadway runs. So, if you want,
it was directed by Randall Myler, who's just he's a genius at doing this kind of stuff. He's done one on Janis Joplin. He did one on the Mamas and the Papas. He knows how to do this.
Maybe we'll see if we can stage a version in Leslie's loft.
Yes, we'll come up to my loft, folks, and we'll do it up in my loft.
There we go. And that is our show for this evening. And when you go to the theater, look for Leslie and me, us too.
On the aisle.
What do you think it's about? What? This movie, this fucking movie. It's gotta be about something. Everything is about something. I think it's about the subconscious.
Come again?
Sharks are these ancient primal creatures, so they represent all the primal fears in all of us, all the terrors and desires that we keep hidden, all the Freudian crap that my therapist's always talking about. That's the shark. You don't agree?
It's an interesting theory.
Okay, well, what do you think it's about?
I think it's about responsibility. When the government puts profit before people, if you can't get rid of the bastards, you gotta take care of the mess yourself. Even if it scares you, for the good of the community.
Wow. Deep. What about you, Robert? What do you think it's about?
It's about a shark.
Yes, but what's it really about?
It's really about a shark. Don't read any more into it. It's a thriller, a machine for making money. Do you really think they're going to be talking about this in 50 years?